Look at me. If you were just tuning in, today's show has been brought to you by Royal Farms, and it's also been brought to you by helpmygamblingproblem.org. And my dumb I literally just got notification from Zach that because I'm doing this on my phone, I forgot to hit the go live button. So luckily we found this out 12 minutes into the show and not geez, man, that what a screw up. The 12 minutes into the show.
I looked at it and I was like, wait a minute, like you're not live on Press Box, we're not live on my channel. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, that has happened one other time in the past, and it was another situation where the power went out and I had to do a wonky setup to get the show going. And that was about a year and a half ago. You would have thought that I would have remembered, and I didn't. So if you are just tuning in because you had no other choice but to be just tuning in, we were talking about Felix Bautista, and Zach's not confident that he's going to be joining the Orioles on the opening day roster because he said to the media he's been throwing his bullpens and throwing sessions at about 85%, and 85% for him is what, 92, 93 on the fastball, so
I don't think he'd be flipping in a splitter or slider too often at 85% either.
Well, and that's the thing. You're probably not throwing too many secondary pitches. You're probably just trying to get command of your fastball. And, he's confident. He's 100% confident that he's going to be 100% by opening day. The Orioles are going to slow play him because he's the most important part of their bullpen moving forward this season. And like we've said a few times before, they don't have a contingency plan. So without Felix Bautista, what are we really doing here? For us, this seems like a repeat from the conversation we literally just had for 10 minutes. But the Orioles don't have a backup plan. And you had Sir Anthony Dominguez. He faced live hitters today in live BP, gave up a double, a hit by pitch, and then he had a strikeout, which was Ramon Arias, who he hit with the first pitch he threw. Then he ends up staying in the box. He strikes him out. He gets another strikeout. But it's more of the same that we saw from Dominguez a little bit down the stretch from the team. So no contingency plan. Sir Anthony Dominguez or Gregory Soto is going to end up having to fill in for Bautista if he's not ready to go on the opening day, or if he is ineffective at any point this year. And Zach, you discussed maybe the Orioles should think about doing a trade with the Cardinals. Nobody seems happy over there. Sonny Gray seemed all but downtrodden when they were interviewing him the other day. Could the Orioles swing a trade for a Ryan Helsley or a Sonny Gray or both to kind of revamp this rotation and bullpen?
That would be a lot of fun, honestly. Watching Sonny Gray sit there and talk like that broke my heart as a former player. Like, you can just tell that day one he is just checked out. He doesn't want to be there, and just hearing his voice, just like, we didn't sign anybody. Like, that's just rough, man. Like, he doesn't want to be there. Helsley probably would never come out and talk like that. He's not as established as Sonny Gray is in this league, but and then you hear the comments from Jim Edmonds that the Cardinals don't even really want the old guys back anymore. They've had zero contact with Yachty since he's left. Just a bunch of weird, different stuff. What's the worst case? You pick the phone up and you're like, hey, what's it going to take for me to get Sonny Gray and Ryan Helsley? It would take a lot, I feel like, to get Helsley with Gray's contract being fairly large and another couple of years on it. His asking price won't be as high. But Helsley being, a dominant closer, that price is high as hell.
Yeah, and the Orioles, at least the fans were talking about making a trade for Helsley during the regular season last year when Kimbrel was beginning to be ineffective, or the writing was kind of on the wall that he might be running out of gas, especially if it comes to the postseason. When it comes to the postseason, and none of those trades never came to fruition. Mike Elias opened spring training by basically saying, we're still on the phones, but we're confident if this is the roster that we're taking north, that this is a good roster that's got a lot of depth, and we're going to be able to have some playoff success with this roster. And Brandon Hyde saying this is the deepest team that he's ever had, and now his 7th season managing the Baltimore Orioles. So they're saying the right things to us, but we also have kind of learned from being Orioles fans, especially for the last 7 to 8 years, to believe none of what you hear and half of what you see, right?
Yeah.
And so with Mike Elias saying this, how much of it is true, Zach? How much of it is true? Is it true that Felix Bautista is going to be ready for opening day and be 100%? How much of it is true that he is on the phone still trying to make things happen? I think that they're done making moves for the season, or at least to start the regular season. They've got a lot of internal battles for position spots. We've been told that Heston Kjerstad, for example, is going to get all the opportunity in the world this spring, and he's going to have a big role. But then Brendan Hyde also said if we're facing a right-handed pitcher, it's going to be Mountcastle at first base and Ryan O'Hearn DHing. Okay, so then where does Heston fit in? Because if Tyler O'Neill is going to play every day, then where does Heston Kjerstad fit into that equation? So already right off the bat, I'm not believing most of what I'm hearing from this. Can you speak on that a little bit and your feelings about what we're being told versus what's actually happening?
I think what they mean is he's going to get his chance to grab the bull by the horns and be the everyday right fielder if he wants to be. I hope that means that they're going to give him at bats in the spring against lefties. A lot of them, especially if they know a lefty starting, like get him in the top 3 in that lineup and let him get as many at bats as possible. Let Holiday lead off that day. Get some of these guys that don't have a lot of left-handed pitching experience right now. Get them in there as much as possible. Gunnar can hit it. Mountcastle can hit it. Like they don't need to be leading off and stuff like that against a lefty. Like it's just see what you got with guys that really need the reps. I think Kjerstad, if they don't make a move, is going to be probably in right field a lot. If he's not in right field, he's going to be in left field a good bit. He's going to get his opportunities. And look, this is probably the deepest team, like Brandon Hyde said, that they have ever had. They have competition at almost every single spot on the field. And even Cedric Mullins is going to have competition this year in center field with Cowser and potentially Lariano against lefties. So no one is, I'm not saying that Gunnar Henderson would ever take a day off, but no one can afford to take a day off but Gunnar Henderson. We got 6, 7 legit starting pitchers right now, and you can only carry 5. You've got 3 lefties in the bullpen. One of them, either Perez, Aiken, or Soto, they're all 3 upgradable if you went and get a guy like Ryan Helsley. Do I think maybe they're content with what they have right now? Yeah. I don't foresee Mike Elias being on the phone, but if somebody called him and said, "Hey, I want Heston Kjerstad and I'll give you Ryan Helsley for it," I think they're going to quickly meet up and start talking about that internally. At this point, though, I don't think they're having their advanced scouts. I don't think they're having those meetings and they're looking at like, okay, who's potentially available. I don't think any of those conversations are going on and then phone calls are being made. Only phone calls at this point are going to be to Mike Elias, in my opinion. I think they are comfortable with what they have.
Yeah, and look what they have, and here's something that I want to be clear about, okay? Because there's negative and there's being realistic about this team, and being realistic about this team, it's not always going to be positive things, And so we can be realistic about this team, and we can say this is a good baseball team. This is a good baseball team with a solid young core that has a pretty sizable window to go out there and contend for a championship for the next 5 years, while you still have Jackson Holliday and Adley Rutschman and Jordan Westberg and Gunnar Henderson, but you can also look at it and say this team is probably a legitimate starting pitcher and a legitimate back-end reliever away from being a World Series contender today on February 16th. And so for us to look at it and say, Zach, and you're younger than me, and I've never seen I've never even seen the Orioles in a World Series in my lifetime. So you haven't either. We've seen 6 playoff appearances since the mid-90s, if that. Yep. So what are we realistically looking at with this team? We're looking at a team that's good enough to make the playoffs, but are they good enough to make a run? And what's going to hinge, that's going to hinge on is how good is this starting rotation? How good is this bullpen? So I do want to get into a little bit the Orioles rotation as compared to the rest of the American League East, because I put out there the other day after the Red Sox signed Alex Bregman, look, the Yankees and the Red Sox both had holes to fill in their roster, and they went out there and they filled them with known commodities. The Orioles have filled their holes with a 41-year-old starting pitcher who is contemplating retirement, a 35-year-old rookie, a 35-year-old middle to late inning reliever, and an outfielder who has spent 14 stints on the IL in a 7-year career. And that's not to say that these guys aren't good signings and they won't be good for the Orioles, but it's to say the Yankees and the Red Sox have done a far better job addressing the needs of their team this offseason than I believe that the Orioles have. I don't know that the Orioles are currently a better ball club today than they were when they got swept in the playoffs and scored 1 run in 18 innings. You don't have Anthony Santander anymore. You don't have Corbin Burns anymore. Maybe you've replaced both of them in the aggregate, but we just don't know that right now. And look, you can have a bunch of these guys take a big step forward. Cowser can continue to progress and go from being a Rookie of the Year finalist to being, a fringe all-star worthy player this year. Jackson Holliday can do what Mike Trout did, where he comes up, gets his cup of coffee in 2011, and he's not good, and then he comes up and he finishes second for the MVP in 2012. You could see Jackson Holliday do that. And we'll talk about that video of The Pursuit. Did you watch The Pursuit the other day?
No, not much of it yet, no.
Okay, I watched it, and he put out there his goals. We'll discuss that in a little bit. I'm not putting anything past this kid at this point. Before we get into any of this, for those of you just joining us, I'm broadcasting live from my parents' living room from my phone because the internet went out at my office and at home because of the wind, which is why we were late getting on the show, really late getting onto the show. So do want to remind you, today's show is brought to you by Royal Farms. Royal Farms is heating up the grill this winter. You can get any grilled chicken sandwich at your neighborhood Rofo for just $6.99. Plus, it's just $20 for a 12-piece mix of their world-famous chicken. And they've got you covered for breakfast, too. For a limited time, combine any breakfast sandwich, perhaps one of their new Southern-style biscuits, plus their baby cake hash browns, and any size beverage for just $7. And speaking of breakfast beverages, try Rofo's new coffee and cappuccino flavors, mocha and horchata. Get to your neighborhood Royal Farms today. Today's show also brought to you by Help My Gambling Problem. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. Now, Zach, I went through and I basically I kind of went over what the Orioles rotation is going to look like as compared to the rotations of the other teams that are in the division. And again, you look at the Orioles starting rotation, Zach Eflin, he's a reliable innings eater. He's got strong command. He's not overpowering. I believe he's got a career 4.17 ERA in 9 career seasons. He's got 3 where he's made 28 starts or more. Then you've got Grayson Rodriguez. He's got really high upside. He has the potential to be an ace. You and I both believe that he's an ace quality pitcher. He just has to get there. And that he's going to be developing into that frontline starter. Charlie Morton won a World Series game on a broken leg. He's got 2 World Series championships. He's a big-time veteran presence. He's durable, but again, 41 years old. How can you realistically expect a guy like him to stay healthy at the age of 41? We saw what happened with Verlander and Scherzer last year after being dominant pitchers their entire careers. Dean Kramer, solid mid-rotation arm. He showed growth in each of the last 3 seasons. He always has anywhere from a 5 to 7, 8, 9 game stretch where he's just not very good. But then the rest of the year, you can expect about a 3.5 ERA out of him. If he's your number 4, that's a solid number 4 with the upside of a really good number 3. Then Tomoyuki Sugano, the big wild card for this rotation, proven in Japan, won 2 of their Cy Young Award based on what their Cy Young criteria is. Also won 3 MVPs over there. Untested in Major League Baseball, had that really great showing in the World Baseball Classic, but that was 8 years ago. And as you've discussed, completely different baseball that they use in the United States in Major League Baseball than they do over in the KBO. So, Zach, with that in mind, let's compare this first to the Yankees rotation. And you're looking at Max Fried, Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon, Luis Gil, and then a battle between Marcus Stroman and Clark Schmidt for that final rotation spot. Max Fried, elite lefty, ace-type stuff. He's had some arm troubles in his career, but the Orioles, if Max Fried is healthy, and we'll just lump Garrett Cole in there too, if those two are healthy, the Orioles don't have a pitcher in their rotation that matches up with them, do they?
No, no. But I mean, that's why they went out and got these guys that can hit left-handed pitching. I mean, Cole's Cole. You know, Cole's going to shove. I mean, there's not much you can do to kind of really combat that, and just pray to God that he's sick that night or something. He's just been that way his whole career. But they made it an emphasis this year to go and get guys that hit left-handed pitching because they struggled with it last year. And most of the AL this year has a very good left-handed pitcher in the top of their rotation. You just have to bank on, that you did your due diligence and these guys are actually going to hit it.
Mm-hmm. And then you look at Carlos Rodon. He's had a couple of seasons where he was an all-star. Looked like he was an ace in the making. Finally discovering that form that made him, one of the top young prospects in the game. He's also battled a ton of injuries. And last year he started the season had a well below 3 ERA through his first 9 starts. And then he just got stung by the long ball like you wouldn't believe all year. And, he pitched well for them most of the year, but he was prone to give up 2, 3, sometimes 4 home runs in any given start. Yep. Carlos Rodon, is there any kind of concern for you with him being in the Yankees rotation? Do you fear Rodon at all? Is this a guy that gives you worry or just another guy that you think the Orioles can handle?
I think Rodon, the Yankees are looking to just move on from him. He's terrible. I mean, his numbers looked okay last year. He's not good in big games. Anytime he faced a team over 500, he got absolutely just lit up. He doesn't scare anybody in the East whatsoever. I mean, I feel like Tampa Bay could probably hit him around at this point. He has his stretches or his 3 innings where he just looks unhittable. And then, like you said, just the ball just starts flying out of the ballpark. And he's not a guy that can really go deep into games for them enough. And with the Marcus Stroman fighting for that 5th spot, like Rodon might be that guy that finally gets kicked out of the rotation and into the bullpen. It all depends. I think Stroman's still okay. He didn't pitch well against the AL East, but I think he's still good enough.
Yeah, he came in to spring training the other day, and they said, "Would you be going to the bullpen?" He's like, "No, I'm a starter. I won't pitch out of relief." And some people think that that's him not being a team player. What's your take on the remarks from Marcus Stroman?
I get it from an aspect of he's going into his final year of his contract. He wants to be a starter. He wants to get that $20+ million deal again. This is a business, and I understand the whole it's bad for the team kind of thing. Like, look, that team would dump him in a heartbeat for somebody better if they could. So it's okay for these players to look out for themselves. And it's just like your job. Like if you pass away, like your job's getting posted within 6 hours. Like it's just the nature of the beast. These teams really don't care about the players, and sometimes they have to look out for themselves. I don't mind it. And I was talking to some guys yesterday. I would love it if somebody could get into his ear and say, "Hey, come to Baltimore and be my setup guy, because you will make 13 to 15 million as a back end bullpen guy. Where if you struggle as a starter, you might not make $15 million. But at 33, you still throw 95, 96. You have 5 pitches. You can get a lot of guys out in the 8th and 9th inning. Like, come to Baltimore. come do it here. We'll trade you Ramon Urias for that."
Yeah, I mean, look. I've always been a big Marcus Stroman fan. I love the swagger that he possesses on the mound. Also being a guy who's between 5'7" and 5'8". I love that short man swagger that he's got there too. But I don't know. I get it. I get what you're saying from a former player's perspective. It's like you've got to do what's best for you. And if the writing's on the wall, if they're not giving you any kind of confidence that they're going to keep you around and make you part of their future plans, and it seems like they're looking to make a move to get rid of me, then why would you do anything for them? You've got to look out for yourself first. Then you look at we move on to Luis Gil. And Luis Gil, a lot of people around these parts at least think that he stole a Rookie of the Year from Colton Cowser. Look, 15 wins and the 3.5 ERA as a rookie last year. When I saw those numbers up on my TV when I was watching that award ceremony or the award announcements, I was like, oh, a young pitcher who just won 15 games with a 3.5 ERA in New York, he's going to win Rookie of the Year. And that's exactly what happened. He can have dominant stuff at times. The Orioles did knock him around last year at times, especially in that game they ended up winning 17-5, where he didn't get through 2 innings. You look at him and you look at Clark Schmidt, two young guys that can start and give you quality innings. But when you look at this rotation as a whole, Zach, it's hard for me to say this isn't the best rotation in the American League East, if not the entire American League.
Yeah, I feel like they could be, and they also could get lit up this year. I mean, Cole's another year older. The fastball velocity is eventually going to start ticking down. Heel walks a lot of people. Rondon walks a lot of people. I mean, is Clark Schmidt beating out Stroman? Like, can he hold up a full season? Do they go with Stroman? Like, does he get knocked? He had a 6.5 ERA against the AL East last year. Like, I feel like they have the same kind of question marks. Every team really does when you kind of look at it. My personal opinion, Texas is head and shoulders above everybody at almost every position on the field. They're my team to beat this year. Getting DeGrom back healthy, Eovaldi's back. You know what he gives you. They have a just top to bottom, their entire roster, all 26 guys is just, they're phenomenal. They might be the only team in the AL this year to win 100 games. But I mean, Yankees, yeah, like they could either just dominate and have a team ERA of like a 3.3, or they could have a 4.45. There's a lot of question marks. I mean, this is why the game's not played on paper. I mean, anything can happen. Guys could have a bad night. Stroman could blow up in the clubhouse, and then the whole team just unravels, because I don't really think Boone has a good stronghold on that team too well.
Yeah.
I mean, and honestly, Max Fried might suck for all we know. Like, some people legitimately cannot handle the New York media. And the first time he goes out there and gets hit around, it could, we don't know what kind of mental person he is. It could crumble him. We don't know. And I feel like they have the same kind of question marks as we do.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not played on paper. Every team's got some kind of question mark. No team is, no team enters with like just like the Dodgers, for example. They have a lot of big names on their roster, and I'm not really concerned about them at all. But when it comes to their offense, their lineup's going to mash. I don't think that there's any way they're not, because even if somebody gets hurt, that lineup is still world class. But their rotation, they've got a lot of guys with injury history in that starting rotation. So you could look at the Dodgers and say they're paper champions. They shouldn't win any less than 115, 120 games this year. But if Tyler Glasnow went out there, and everybody was talking about how great he was. He made 20 starts. He got injured again. Guys that generally get hurt.
Always gets hurt. Always.
Yeah. Yeah. They get hurt. And that's why, you talk about the Texas Rangers, you talk about Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom hasn't been healthy since 2020. He's been hurt every single year. He's had multiple Tommy John surgeries. He is. You can look at him as historically one of the greatest starting pitchers in the history of the game, and one of the biggest what ifs of all time because of all the injuries. So he's got pitchability. He's going to come out there, and when he does pitch, that he knows what he's doing and he can pitch. Mm-hmm. How great is his stuff coming off the second Tommy John surgery? How great is he going to be, at hitting his spots? What's his velocity going to be like? And furthermore, even if all that stuff is A+, like it's been his entire career, how many starts is he going to give you? How many innings is he going to give you before he's back on the shelf? Yeah. We're at a point now with Jacob deGrom where, yeah, man, you're the best pitcher in the world, but it doesn't do me any good when you're not on the IL. And I have no choice but to expect you to be hurt at some point this year, because it's been 5 years since you haven't been, So I look at that rotation, and, and Nathan Eovaldi, he posts up. And he's a really, really good pitcher who turns into an ace in the postseason. I look at, John Gray. I'm not too enthused about him. Yeah. I'd have to look at the rest of their rotation. Texas they have a very solid roster, but they have warts too, just like the Yankees and the Orioles do. What about the Boston Red Sox? They went out there, they traded for Garrett Crochet. They signed Walker Buehler, who was an ace in the making before he got hurt. Looked really bad at times last year for the Dodgers. Then he gets into the postseason and he becomes dominant Walker Buehler again. You have those two guys at the top of your rotation. Then you have Brian Bello, who's a young, high upside righty in that rotation. Lucas Giolito is a former Cy Young finalist, got a veteran presence, desperately in need of a big bounce back. And then you have Cutter Crawford and Tanner Houck, who are, battling it out for that fifth spot in that rotation. Your thoughts on the Boston Red Sox rotation, because they could have 2 or 3 aces, or they could have a bunch of duds.
Yeah, same thing. Like you said, it's hit or miss with everybody in the East, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
The only probable that I think that we can guarantee ourselves is Tampa's going to pitch, because it doesn't matter who the hell they run out there. They could run out Barney for all we care, and somehow Barney's going to make it through 5 innings, with eight strikeouts with Tampa Bay's coaching. So I mean, everybody has a hole. Boston's rotation is good. I mean, they were pretty good last year. They tanked really bad in the second half, and I don't understand why. I really don't think they understood why either. They just couldn't figure it out. I mean, they went from just shoving it the first half against everyone to just they were struggling to get through 5 in the second half. And I don't know if just a bunch of young guys just hit that wall and just weren't, in shape enough to hit that grind, or if teams just figured it out. Boston has no idea. I have no idea. I would say probably you can expect them to be very strong in the first half.
Right.
Don't let them get a very solid lead on anybody in the first half. But they still have their question marks on defense. I don't think Alex Bregman fixes their defense enough. I mean, they were one of the worst defenses in all of baseball last year. Does one guy fix that? No.
And where's he playing?
They think he's playing second. You have one of the best prospects in baseball that's ready to roll at second base, and Campbell. Why would you block that? I mean, we blocked Jackson Holliday, so I understand it. They really don't think he's ready, but everybody has question marks. I mean, it's easy to look on paper and be like, the Orioles just don't match up, but you don't know what you're getting week or year in, year out. I mean, how many times have we seen guys win a Rookie of the Year? Like God, what the Kyle Lewis? But 2 years later, he wasn't even playing baseball anymore. Like, he was just that bad after winning Rookie of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
And those sort of things happen. Like, and it's easy for us as O's fans to be like, Kowser's going to get better, and Kjerstad's going to get better, and Gunner's going to get even better. They might not. All of them could take a step back. That's just how baseball is sometimes. And yeah, I expect Boston to get hot early, but they don't scare me. Like, Kershay's cool. He gets a lot of strikeouts, but he pitches 5-6 innings. Like, who's in their bullpen that's going to shut us down?
Yeah, that's a great
39-year-old, 40-year-old Aroldis Chapman. Like, that's really it. He's prone to giving up the long ball. I can promise you Tyler O'Neill's going to take him deep a few times this year. That's their hold. Their defense and their bullpen is a huge hole. And those are things that can lose you games late. Like, your starting rotation can go 8 innings every day, but you could seriously lose every game in the 9th because their defense and their bullpen is that bad.
Yeah. I mean, and look, you can, who's in Toronto's bullpen, right?
I couldn't even tell you. I honestly couldn't even tell you.
Right. And
I have to look it up right now.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you who's in Tampa Bay's bullpen right now either. And Tampa Bay, I don't know how, every year I say Tampa Bay is the worst team in this division. They'll be lucky to win 80 games. And then they go out there and they win 90 to 95 games and they make the playoffs, and you just don't know how. Last year was the first time that I was even remotely correct. It was the first year where I said, you know what, I'm not going to second guess them anymore because they always prove me wrong. Last year and this year, I don't see how they can prove me wrong. Yeah, they're getting back. They're getting back McClanahan, Rasmussen. They've got Littell in that rotation. They've got Ryan Pepio. He could be something. Shane Baz is coming off an injury. He could be something, a former first-round pick, or I think we say a compensatory pick. But I just don't see how a team like Tampa Bay stacks up. Toronto, I'd really be interested to see how their season's going to go, because they still have Vladdy there. They still have Bo Bichette. They just added Anthony Santander. That team they still got George Springer. They can still hit.
Jimenez too.
Right? Yeah. And that team can hit. They can play a little bit of defense, and then you look at their starting rotation, and they've got Kevin Gausman. They've got Chris Bassett. They've got Jose Barrios. So you look at that. They fell off a cliff last year. Toronto absolutely fell off a cliff last year. They had all the talent in the world. They kind of wish that they were the Orioles. right now, where they had arguably the best young roster in baseball, but they couldn't take it to that next level. And it seems like the Orioles could have that potential to take it to the next level. How good or how bad is Toronto going to be this year? I have no idea what to expect from that team.
I think they suck.
Oh, point blank. Point blank.
Mean, it's just how they are. I mean, they always seem to start okay, and then they just fall off a cliff. And yeah, they have some good guys in their lineup, and their top of the rotation is fairly decent. But like, I'm looking at some of these names that are in the bullpen. Like Jeff Hoffman is probably the biggest name. Yimi Garcia is pretty decent. Zach Pop, Nick Robertson, Uriel Rodriguez. Like, I've never heard of some of these guys. Not that I'm not taking that away from them, but look, I think their manager is not that great either. They struggle to find guys. Like Anthony Santander is going to be in left. I don't know if that's the best thing for them. Varsho will be in center and Springer will be in right. That's a really bad defensive outfield on the corners. Both of them don't move very well anymore. I mean, Varsho can still go get it. Don't get me wrong. He's a very solid defensive player. Doesn't hit at all. It's just a big questions mark with that. And like you said with Tampa, man, their organization, their coaching is just, it's top notch, man. They year in, year out, they have almost nobody on offense who's worth a damn, but they find a way to win 85, 90 games. And it's because of their pitching. These guys come up and you never heard of them before. And you always hear like, oh, it's their first start. And then they'll shove for 7 innings. Like, it's just what they do. And I mean, I expect the same from them this year. And they still have a little bit of hitting left. And wouldn't shock me at all for them to win 82 to 85 games or more and be even more competitive. They just, even the years that they've went deep into the postseason, like you look at them, you're like, that team's not winning much this year. And then they just win and win and win. And it's because I think they all just buy in that organization. And you go back to Toronto, I don't think anybody's bought into that organization in years. Like, they win on pure talent alone. They don't win because they're a good baseball team. They're not a good team. And that's why I think they're just going to suck again this year. I expect them to finish in last this year.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be them and Tampa Bay battling it out for the bottom of that division. That's for sure. I think if the Orioles stay healthy, the Orioles are a first or second place team in this division. I certainly expect them to, at a minimum, win a wild card. But we've still got to play the games. We got to see if any of these guys are going to take a step forward. And one of them is Jackson Holliday. And Jackson Holliday came in last year as the number 1 overall prospect in baseball after being the top pick in the draft in 2022. He said he wanted to get to the majors in 2 years, and he went out and did it. This is a guy who was maybe a back-end first-round talent after his junior year, but a lot of people thinking he was a second-round talent after his junior year, and then put in the work and did everything he needed to do to become the number 1 pick in the draft. And if you listen to all the draft analysts from that year, they said he's the one player that they can ever remember seeing him get better in every phase of the game, where it changed his grade in every phase of the game. And so I look at Jackson Holliday. He started his career, 1 for 32? And then, or 2 for 32. And then he comes back and he homers in 3 straight games, hits that big grand slam on July 31st against the Blue Jays in a victory. He had 5 home runs really quickly in his second stint, and then kind of fell off. End of the year, batting 188 with an OPS south of 600. And, but you saw him change his approach at the plate. You saw him change his stride. He went from that big leg kick to a toe tap and hit like 380 something his last 8 games, and struck out 5 times and walked 5 times in those 8 games. So the approach at the plate got better. And then I watched The Pursuit the other night, and I saw a kid who bulked up, working out hard all off season. He changed his diet. He basically just eats nothing but ground beef, and his wife cooks up vegetables for him, and they just eat ground beef and vegetables all day, every day, to the point where he came in weighing 200 pounds of nothing but lean muscle into camp this year. Says he's hitting the ball harder than he's ever hit it in his life. He can just feel the difference when it comes off of his bat. He listed his goals. He was like, look, I can't be rookie of the year this year, but I want to be an all-star, and I want to be a Gold Glove second baseman. Are you putting any of that past Jackson Holliday at this point? Like, can you really look at this kid and say, and say definitively that he can't do anything he says he's going to do.
No, I mean, he comes from a pedigree of baseball anyway. I mean, he's been around the game forever, and he's gotten better. I mean, they threw him over to second base, and learning a new position on the fly is not easy. People might think second base is easy, and it's not. Nothing in the big leagues is easy. He made the adjustments. He doesn't seem to like sit and sulk. He's a quiet, laid back kid. I get that. But you never really see him like pouting. I don't want to throw Austin Hayes under the bus, but we would see Austin Hayes pout on the bench sometimes. You don't see that from Jackson. And he was 20 years old. It's easy for a 20-year-old to kind of go in the corner, and throw some shit and pout a little bit. You didn't see that. I mean, he sits down, he just takes his batting gloves off, and he goes back out and plays defense. And when you see somebody with that kind of demeanor, I think the sky's the limit for somebody like that, because Gunner's the same way. And I think we might see a little bit more fire out of Jackson now he starts to get a little bit older, because he's going to start hitting that age now where he really starts getting competitive. Gunner's in that age right now. You're going to start seeing that out of Jackson, where I think he's going to start getting a little bit more excited when he hits some doubles and triples and stuff. And, smile's going to get a little bit bigger when he hits some big home runs and all. And I don't put anything past him. I mean, if he says he's going to be an all-star, I mean, you look around the league at second base, like who's stopping him? Maybe Jimenez, maybe Bregman. Bregman's a 260-25 guy. Like, I think Jackson's better than that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny that you bring up Jimenez, because in that statement that he made when they were interviewing him at his house, he said, I know Toronto's got that Jimenez guy up there. He's like, but I want to be the all-star at second base. I want to be a Gold Glover. I'm not putting it past him. I see a kid who's working his butt off. He just eats, breathes, lives baseball, and I saw, or I was listening to the radio the other day, and I made a post about the most hated guy in Baltimore sports seems to think that Jackson Holliday is who he is at 20 years old. And it's like, man, I cannot wait for this season to start and watch him in one of those first games just lace a ball into the left center field gap and turn it into a triple somehow. And then and have it just be like, this is that dude. Now, do I think he's going out and hitting 300 with 35 bombs this year? Absolutely not. Do I think he will at some point in his career? At 100%. Yeah. But I'm expecting 270, 340, 350 out of him this year. I'm expecting a 2020 season out of this kid. Now, I know you expect way more stolen bases than that. I believe you said the other day you'd be disappointed if he only had 20 stolen bases this year, because you expect that by June.
Yeah, I mean, a guy's got a 95 speed rating. Like, put his ass in motion. I want to see everybody run, not just Jackson, but when you have somebody at a 95 speed rating, who has the eye that he has, if his on base percentage is up there, get him going. Like, send him, because if he's hitting in the 9 hole and he's getting on, 2 or 3 times a game, if you send him in motion, well, guess what Gunnar Henderson's seeing? He's seeing a fastball, because they don't want him to steal. They're not going to flip a get me over curveball in there, because he's going to swipe second. And if he does, guess what's coming? A fastball, because you can't get another get me over curveball in, because he's going to swipe third. And that's why they need to get them going. They need to be really, really aggressive this year. If Holiday doesn't have 40 stolen bases this year, I will probably lose my mind. I'll do it live so everybody can see it. I don't care. But the kid needs to have 40 stolen bases this year. If not at least 30, 35. He's fast enough to do it. He's young. He gets really good jumps. We've seen him do it a couple times last year, and he stays low when he goes to his breaks. Like, there's no reason he can't have 35 stolen bases. And if he doesn't, it's because the Orioles are not letting him run. And that's why I'll lose my mind.
And it's crazy, because the Orioles had 98 stolen bases as a team last year. And I was shocked, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, I think Westberg stole 12, Gunnar stole 21, Seti stole 32. So when you really add them up, even still 98, where did the other, 40 stolen bases come from last year? But I mean, they were in there somewhere. But I just never felt like this team ran enough. Jorge Mateo didn't steal a base after the beginning of June last year. Like, this team has even Heston Kjerstad has top 5 speed on this team. Jordan Westberg's got, I think, 90th percentile speed. You have got guys on this team that can swipe a bag at any point. I would love to see them have 4 or 5 guys with 20-plus steals in this lineup. I don't know how realistic that is, but if you have 5 guys in your lineup that can swipe a bag at any time, that puts so much pressure on the opposition, on the opposing pitcher. And like you said, then they can't throw that curveball to trying to because that base is going to be stolen. Going to see a lot more fastballs, and that really works, especially for somebody like a Colton Cowser who just eats fastballs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And with that in mind, the potential impact that a guy like Jackson Holliday can have on the lineup, you're expecting him to start the year batting 9th, which is basically like having a second leadoff man. How big is his impact if he is who we expect him to be this year?
Huge. I expect him, my expectations, I should say, I speak for myself here. By June, I see him being the leadoff hitter.
Me too.
Right now, they're taking the approach right now is have your best hitter lead off, which is Gunnar, getting the most at bats and stuff like that. And I saw that graphic, and I forget, I think Rob Shields had tagged me in it about like the amount of at bats or something, or amount of plate appearances that guys get with nobody on. And the 3-hole hitter was like loaded with it. But I'm very confident if Jackson Holliday was leading off, if he's back to, walking a ton and, spraying the ball around the field. But if you had a healthy Jackson Holliday leading off, a healthy Adley Rutschman, which I still think a healthy Adley Rutschman is a damn good 2-hole hitter. And then Gunnar Henderson, like, whew, that's an offense, in my opinion. And if not, even if he's still in the 9-hole, which I think he starts in the 9-hole, they still have Gunnar Henderson behind him. More times than not, I feel like Jackson's going to be on base for Gunnar, where last year the 8 and 9 hole in our team wasn't that great. So Gunnar was hitting with nobody on far too much, in my opinion. And I think that's where a lot of people complaining about him leading off was just nobody was getting on behind him. And he led the game off, with some home runs and stuff like that. And that's cool to get out to a nice lead. But later in the game, you want somebody in front of him on base, and they just weren't getting it there enough for him.
Right.
Gunner's a guy that can drive in 100 runs. I think pretty easily.
Yeah.
And for him to only have 80 some, it's because he's stuck in the leadoff spot with nobody on in front of him enough. But God, can you imagine, like, we'll think ahead here to 2026, Holliday, Rutschman, Gunnar, and then in the 8 and 9 spot, you might have like Cowser and Bradfield. Like, holy hell.
Right. It's crazy to think about the fact that Cowser would be hitting 8th, but like legitimately, Cowser at that point, maybe he's a 260, 30 home run guy, and he's your 8 hitter because he's got decent speed and great on base capabilities. And you've got your other thumpers in the middle of your lineup. And this before we even talk about Jordan Westberg. And I think Jordan Westberg is a natural born run producer. I think he's going to be one of the Orioles' unsung heroes this year. And a lot more people are beginning to learn who Jordan Westberg is. Today's show brought to you by Glenn Clark Radio. If you missed anything from Glenn Clark Radio this week, including conversations with Keith Law, recently retired former Oriole Richard Blyer, former Maryland safety and potential Ravens draft target Dante Trader, and more, you can find them all now in the Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature at PressBoxOnline.com. And as always, watch or listen to GCR every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. at PressBoxOnline.com/radio or right here on Facebook and YouTube. Also, make sure you go out and get your best of issue of PressBox. These are the final days of the best of issue. By Wednesday, a brand new issue will hit the newsstands. Where on the cover, Orioles owner David Rubenstein sits down for a Q&A with Stan the Fan Charles and Glenn Clark. And also inside, we meet new Oriole Tyler O'Neill, as well as college lacrosse players from around the state. You can find a new issue all throughout the region, including at 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can read it all at PressBoxOnline.com starting this Wednesday. So we were talking about Jackson Holliday hitting 9th, and next year in 2026 it could be Colton Cowser hitting 8th and Enrique Bradfield hitting 9th. And you mentioned Enrique Bradfield. Cedric Mullins is in his final year. He's hitting free agency. Unless he goes out there and hits 290 and has another 30-30 season, this is his last year as a Baltimore Oriole. With Cedric, and it's is there any pressure being put on him with Ramon Laureano in the organization? He's going to be on the roster. Had a really strong 70+ games with the Braves down the stretch last year, where he seemed to regain his stroke, find his power. The defense has always been there. How big is this season for Cedric Mullins? Does he have any pressure on him? Is he feeling any kind of heat from Laureano entering this season? And how big is Cedric Mullins' season for the Orioles to get them off and running, especially when he's likely going to be hitting right in front of Holiday 8th, and when Holiday inevitably moves up, he'll likely be hitting 9th for this team.
Yeah, if he performs well, the Orioles only get better. Is there pressure on him? Yeah, I think so. And it's not just from Ramon. It's also from Kjerstad. Because if Kjerstad's hitting really good, Tyler O'Neill's hitting really good, Kjerstad's got a lot of pop, and he is arguably a better defender at this point. Like, there's a lot of pressure on Cedric. And my hopes is he doesn't feel that pressure like Austin Hayes did last year and kind of try to do too much. Just go out and play ball, because you're still a vital piece to this team. Anything that you add to us helps. If he comes out at a 260 at a Cedric Mullins this year, with just 20 home runs, is a successful season to me. I don't see him playing every day, at least from the start. I think they're going to be very aggressive analytically with the matchups against lefties and whatnot. Because the last thing you really want to see is Garrett Crochet versus Cedric Mullins. It's not going to end out well. But Laureano being right-handed, going against Crochet and stuff like that, you'll see more of that early on. But the pressure is definitely there. And I just look, it either bursts pipes or, makes diamonds. So we're going to find out who he is as a person and as a player. And it's going to play big into his contract. I mean, if he really wants it, he's going to just dig in and be that guy. And he finished the second half last year really good. He hit for us in the playoffs. Like, it's there. It's there to keep building on. And the ball's in his court. Like, obviously, he's going to get the opportunities first because he's been here for so long. How long is another issue, in my opinion. I don't know how long of a leash he's going to have. There's just too many guys. So you just have to take advantage of every opportunity he gets. Pray he gets through spring training healthy. Something that's where Austin lost his job last year. It was, he got sick and Kjerstad started hitting, and the same exact thing could happen. Pull a little hamstring in spring training and Laureano starts really smashing the ball. Like, those kind of things happen in sports. So you pray that Cedric Mullins stays healthy, because he does help the team a lot. I don't know what to expect from him. I mean, I could see him being a 260 guy, and I could see him hitting 215 again.
Yeah, he had from June 9th on last year, he hit 279. I think he had like a 388 on base percentage. I mean, that's 90+ games 80+ games where he hit 279 and had an OPS approaching 900 for this ball club last year. And that's Cedric Mullins. That's the Cedric Mullins that you get to start this year. That's huge for this team, especially because he can be hitting in the bottom half of that order, or he could find himself potentially taking the leadoff spot and moving Gunnar into a more run-producing role until Holiday is ready to take over that role. What I can tell you definitively is that against lefty, Cedric's not playing. Cedric is not playing. It's going to be Laureano in center field. It's going to be O'Neill in right. It's going to be Kjerstad in left. Cedric ain't starting against lefties to start the year. And when you look at what that defense is going to look like, he may not even be coming in as a defensive replacement in those games, unless you want to get O'Neill off his feet and you have a solid lead, or his spot's not coming up in the lineup in the 8th or 9th inning. Right. You're gonna find yourself with Cedric Mullins not even coming off the bench. Unless it's the pinch run, because your defense is going to be solid out there, and the Orioles, like, legitimately, Zach, they could have their defense. When you talk about their outfield defense, is going to be incredible this year, in my opinion, because O'Neill's a 2-time Gold Glover. If he's healthy and he's out there in right field, you've got either Cedric or Laureano in center, and you've got Kjerstad, who was the Orioles' best rated defensive outfielder last year. He's patrolling left field. Then you look at their defense in left, and I mean in the infield. And you've got Westberg at third base. He is a really solid third baseman. Gunnar is a lot better than what we saw when he was trying to do too much and maybe had a little bit of that tendonitis that you were alluding to in the second half of the season. Gunnar is a really good shortstop. And I look at Ryan Mountcastle. He's a two-time Gold Glove finalist. Now, Gold Glove awards aren't what they used to be. They're more popularity contests now than anything else. But the Orioles, this is a team that they weren't great defensively last year, and they could turn that on its head this year, play really good defense. And that, we've been talking about this rotation all off season. Having that great defense behind that rotation can make your team that much better. It is one of those unsung important parts of your team is having great defense behind your rotation, and it just makes it that much better.
Yeah, I mean, there was plenty of times last year. Certain guys on the mound. I'm not saying that it always happened, but we would see Ramon jump out of the way of the ball at third base. Ball was smoked. I mean, don't get me wrong, but it extended innings, and then runs happen. And then we saw the miscues behind in shallow left field where Gunnar and Ramon ran into each other. Runs happened after that. Like, miscues on defense will really hurt a starting pitcher. And, they're going to give up runs after. That's just how baseball works. And what I was always told in college, a big inning happens from a bloop, and a walk, a bloop, and a blast. I mean, it's just how it is. So you walk a guy that's your fault. And then you have a duck fart, or you have a defensive lapse or something like that. You're leading to a big inning. It's hard to get right back in there and get the next guy out after something dumb happens. And to shore up your defense, instead of leaving two guys on, a better defense could potentially have two outs, turning twos or making those great defensive plays. I mean, we're going to see Gold Glove all-star stuff out of Gunnar all year again. The first half, and I went back and watched some of his highlights, and even Ben McDonald said it's a different Gold Glove show every night out here with Gunnar Henderson. And then, a bad month or two happens, and then like half the fan base is like, oh, Gunnar Henderson needs to come off shortstop. Like, we were just saying how every single night this guy is making some kind of web gem play, and now we just want to take him off shortstop. Like, Gunnar's fine. He's outstanding. That left side of the infield is outstanding. Could be one of the best in baseball. Obviously, I think we could probably say that Bobby is a slightly better defender than Gunnar, but who's playing third for them? Anybody of importance? I mean, they're probably not Jordan Westberg. Seattle's got a good shortstop. I don't really know who their third baseman is either. I can't think of any. The Yankees don't even have a third baseman right now. Rafael Devers isn't better than Jordan Westberg, that's for sure. Toronto, I have no idea who their third baseman is. Tampa, I don't even know if they have a major league third baseman. You could probably say maybe Texas, with Jung and Seager there. They're a good group there. Yeah, I mean, we probably have one of the better left sides in the AL. And
it's not Jackson, baseball. If not all baseball, when you really look at it.
Yeah, I could see it being top 5, top 3, maybe. I'd have to really, really peek around the league. But with Mountcastle, he gets better at everything he does. He gets better every year. So you might even get even better defense this year out of that guy. Jackson, I mean, second base was an eyesore last year defensively, and it didn't matter who you put there. Westberg struggled there, Jackson struggled there, Mateo struggled there. God, I don't even remember the one dude they signed for like 10 games.
Matt Kemp.
The other Kemp.
Tony Kemp.
Tony,
I almost called him Sean Kemp, the old Supersonics player.
Yeah. So I mean, look, if they can shore up second base, that is probably the only hole, and then maybe shore up some more on the catching side of it with being able to throw out runners. A lot of that to me last year, being a former catcher, and I really want to sit down with Tim Cousins one day live. Tim was my coach back when I was with the Marlins, and he's the bullpen coach / catching coordinator now. Tim will flat out tell you 90% of the stolen bases are on the pitcher, and everybody quickly wants to blame Adley for, bouncing the ball or doing that. Look, when a guy's got a great jump, you got to do anything possible just to get the ball there and pray that they slide bad or something like that. When they get a good jump, it's on the pitcher. And most major league pitchers are delivering the ball to the plate. So when they break their hands and they get the ball to the plate between 1.8 and 1.9 seconds, you're pretty much already halfway to second base at that point. So mechanics go out the window and the ball's just got to get there any way possible. So yeah, sometimes it's going to bounce, sometimes it's going to go into center field, and sometimes it's just going to be downright shit throw. When we've watched when Adley had time to just throw correctly, it's a beautiful sight. You know, the ball's right there almost every time, and guys are always out by a step or two. You know, I don't really have an issue with Adley, so to say. We know he's got I think he's got a top 10 arm strength in the game. His glove work's a little slow, and the footwork's a little slow, but a lot of that could be because he's rushing. Because last year, God, our pitchers they sucked at delivering the ball to the plate and holding runners and stuff. And it wasn't just Corbin Burnes. They collectively sucked. So I really hope that they address that this year, because Gary throws well too. Gary throws just like Adley. Give him a chance, because they're not bad. They're not as bad as people make them out to be, at least. But those were the two holes last year, was throwing runners out behind the plate and at second base. So if you shore that up, I mean, you're going to get a lot better pitching stats out of that too.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Corbin Burnes, Craig Kimbrell, Yennier Cano, Tyler Wells, Felix Bautista, all of them. And Bautista didn't pitch last year, and Wells barely pitched last year. But all those guys are terrible at holding runners on. And when Adley's catching it every day, I've never been a believer that his arm isn't good. I mean, coming out of college, they were talking about how great of a receiver he is and how good his arm is. And we saw it his first year with Robinson Chirinos being his backup catcher. Now that's one of his bench coaches this year. I think that they're putting an emphasis on getting the ball to the plate faster without compromising a pitcher's stuff and ability. But I would not be surprised to see Adley come out there and be a better defender this year. He went into this offseason knowing that he had a lot to work on, offensively, defensively. And I will say, the videos that I've seen so far, Adley looks a lot leaner. He looks more like the build that he had his rookie year. Yeah,
he looks ripped.
He looks a lot, and I noticed it in his legs. His legs look to me leaner and more muscular, whereas last year it just looked like he just had thickness. You know what I mean? Which I think that he was slower with foot speed than he had been in the past as well. So Adley, you've noticed what I've noticed, that he looks leaner. Your expectations for him, is he going to be the same guy that hit 290 with 15 home runs through June? Or is he closer to the guy who, barely hit 200 the last half of the season? I don't think he's close to that guy. I don't know if he's the 290, 15 home run guy either, though.
It all depends. I mean, look, Gunnar Henderson was a threat on the base, and they had to give him a lot of fastballs, and he hit it. He's a damn good right-handed hitter. That might be because he DHs more against lefties. I haven't been able to kind of piece that together. He demolishes lefties. He particularly only faces lefties when he's not catching. So I can't really put those two and two together of how to maximize his abilities at the plate. But I think he's closer to a 290 guy than he is a 200 guy. He controls the zone well when he wants to. He didn't in the second half, but he does in the first half. He slaps the ball to left field. I shouldn't even say slap. I mean, he drives the ball to left field fairly well on line drives. Typically, he doesn't mind working a count. I think we see that Adley back again, not the one that's swinging first pitch at a ball, in his eyes, or, the ball, slider down and in, like just trying to do too much. And like you said, slightly slower hands. He got a little chunkier last year. And some of that might have been to the hand injury because you just couldn't really work out correctly, couldn't really hit correctly. We don't know. I think we see a really good Adley Rutschman again. And definitely, I would say over this year, probably over 280.
Yeah, and I think you see a more determined and focused Adley, because last year was really the first time in his entire life that he experienced extended failure. When he first came up in 2022, there was a 3-week stretch where he just couldn't hit to start his career, and then he finished second in Rookie of the Year voting that season. Adley faced a lot of failure last year, and that's not something that I think he wants to sit with. I think he's going to come out here determined. And it leads to another question. Before I get to that, I want to remind everybody the County Sports Zone is a place to go to find every score from every high school sporting event all year long. And it is proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Yeah, we're looking at this team, and you've mentioned it earlier this week to me that the rotation is important. The bullpen is important, but probably most important to this team is the offense, because it wasn't the pitching staff's fault that the Orioles didn't get a win in the playoffs for the second straight year. They didn't hit. They didn't hit from basically the middle of July on last year. And we're looking at, we need Adley to come in determined and focused and prove that he's the guy that we think or thought that he was. We need Colton Cowser to take that next step forward and prove that he can hit something other than a fastball. And Jackson Holliday to prove he was worth number 1 overall pick. And Heston Kjerstad, and Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Westberg. A lot of big ifs, a lot of big needs for a lot of these guys to take that next step. How important is this offense to this team's success? And how realistic is it to expect all of those things to happen for this team to succeed?
I mean, they've averaged what 4.8 to 5.0 runs over the last 2 seasons. I don't think that changes. I think they're still one of the top offenses in all of baseball. I think their approach changes a little bit more. I think we see a little bit less home runs, not by much. This team's going to still pound the ball out of the ballpark, but I think the on base percentage as a team gets better. And we saw it in the second half a little bit where they weren't hitting, but they were drawing more walks. Most of their hitting woes really happened with runners in scoring position. They seemed to hit when nobody was on. If you find a good balance with that, and that's what, from the comments that Cody Ashley made, that's all he's focused on, is just hit the ball hard. Don't try to hit it at a certain spot. Just hit it hard. Let it fall where it needs to. Let's work counts again. Let's get ourselves back into favored counts and stuff. And I still think they're going to be aggressive early in the account. I still think they're going to chase some first pitches if it's there, but I think they're really going to start harping on, make sure it's there. Balls move a lot in the big leagues. Don't chase a ball with your eyes that's running up. Don't chase a slider. Like, it's got to be there. And everything rides on this team's offense, in my opinion. I feel like the pitching staff is balanced. It's not great. It's not bad. It's balanced. I think the bullpen could be extremely strong with one more addition, but it's still, I would say, above average balanced. It can win a lot of baseball games for you. It's all going to come down to the offense. If they come out and average 5 runs a game, I still think they win 95 games. If they only average 4.3, they're going to win about 80, 85. A lot of it depends on them, but it's good that way. I feel like they're young kids. They thrive in this situation, and they haven't shown me any reason other than just collectively sucking as an entire team last year. But I think they come back out. They're all hungry about it. I mean, they all. I can guarantee they all read Twitter. They all read us, talking crap about them all year long, and they're going to come out hungry and determined.
Yeah, I got myself blocked by Ryan O'Hearn pretty early in the year last year for some of the stuff that I was saying about him. And I could talk for another 20 minutes about Ryan O'Hearn. But there's nothing against the guy. I just don't see the fit on the roster. But this team, they have a ton of talent, a ton of young talent. They can hit. They can 100% hit. Don't know what happened to them last year. I think that it was probably not having a proven 3 or 4 hitter in the lineup and not having to have that fear. Like, pitchers don't have the fear against this Orioles team once they get past Gunnar Henderson, like they do against a Yankees team that at the time had Judge and Soto in the middle of the order, or the Dodgers who have Freeman and Ohtani and Teoscar Hernandez and Mookie Betts and Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle to worry about. But I think that the Orioles have those guys internally. I think Kobe Mayo could turn into a guy like that. Tyler O'Neill, if he stays healthy, I mean, the dude just mashes baseballs, and the Orioles have a couple of guys in their lineup, namely Colton Cowser and Gunnar Henderson, that when they get a hold of a baseball, it just sounds and looks different off their bat. They've got a ton of talent. It's just up to them to to get out there and prove it. And you're not going to convince me that a team that's this young and experienced, a lot of them experienced failure for the first time in their lives last year. And it's weird to say from a team that won 91 games, but I mean, they won 10 less games the year before. They put up no fight in the postseason. I think you have a team that's hungry and determined to come out there and be the best team in the American League this season. I think that's what we have to look forward to this year. What you have to look forward to, anybody that's watching or listening, is the CIAA tournament, which is coming up beginning on February 25th. Baltimore welcomes the excitement of the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at the CFG Arena from February 25th to March 1st. You can get your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. I will never, ever do a show from my phone again. I don't know what the setup is with Restream from my phone. It was out of necessity because it was almost looking like, how am I going to do a show because I have no power and no internet anywhere right now? So it was either do it from my phone or cancel at the last second, which I was not about to do. So next week we should be back looking much cleaner and much more what you're used to. I'm wondering, we don't have any comments today. At least if we do, I can't see them. And usually we have a ton of interaction, especially when Zach's on the show. So I'm wondering if it's because of the wonky setup that I've got going on here.
Yeah, so because it's vertical like this, it actually sent it to YouTube Shorts instead of the regular YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's some. I can't click them and show them, but there's some in there. Like Daniel Pitts is on there, Birdland Sports Zone, Rob Weatherford, just a bit outside. There's some guys in here. Call up Kobe Mayo on Twitter. Yes, I mean there's some in here. I just can't put them up on the screen.
Okay. Well then, are there any that you want to get into, that you want to discuss? I do have a couple of questions I want to ask you before we get out of here, but I do want to know if there's anything that we need to respond to with some of the viewers, because from my phone I see nothing.
Yeah. So I mean, John Means signed in Cleveland while we were live. It's a good little spot for him. Daniel says, I think this team is an ALCS team at the moment. We're missing a couple pieces to win the World Series. I have no arguments with that. It all comes down to hitting. I think our pitching is good enough. I know people will argue that the pitching is good enough if you hit. Yeah, that's all it comes down to.
So I look at this. I think they're an ALCS team also. So what we have to ask ourselves is that a successful season? And I think that when you look at what they've done, in my lifetime, they've been to 3 ALCSs and they've won 4 games in those 3 ALCS appearances. They've never been to a World Series. Do we want them to go to a World Series? Absolutely. We get so excited, especially with a team this good, because we think that they have a chance to go to a World Series. But Zach, is it a failure if they don't? If they win a couple of postseason series, if they get into the ALCS, I don't know that I can look at this season and be disappointed. I'll be upset if they get to the ALCS and don't put up a fight or don't get to the World Series. But I can't imagine looking at this season as a disappointment if that's the end result.
I don't think so. I mean, you make an ALCS when everybody has picked you to finish 3rd and 4th in the division this year. I think it's a damn good season. And the first contract isn't even up until 2027, and that's Ryan Mountcastle. Like, yeah, you're running it back with the same team, basically. Yeah, you got some 1-year contracts and whatnot, but who cares? You know, next year's pitching free agency is loaded.
Not to mention you honestly, get Braddock back.
So what's really not talked about, and I honestly wonder if a lot of this plays into it, the talent that this organization has on the mound that is coming up is almost as bad as the infield blockage that we had. And a lot of people don't know it yet. Bowie this year, look, if you're close, I highly, highly, highly suggest people to go out and watch Bowie this year. The amount of arms that Bowie is going to have this year is going to be incredible. And you're going to see guys that are throwing triple digits there. You're going to see guys that are just, snapping off crazy curveballs. It's all coming. And we've seen the video of Cade Stroud blowing a fastball by Adley earlier, 100 miles an hour. It's all coming. It's all there, and it's on its way. Brandon Young is already in big league camp. Chase McDermott when he's healthy. Cade Povich, right? That was your AAA guys last year. You didn't really hear much behind that. Well, now you got Nestor Germain and you got Dylan Hyde and you got Zach Fruit coming through, and I forget the other guy's name. But there's like 2 or 3 more guys that they're going to be in Bowie and they're all throwing 95 plus and they're getting a lot of outs. And, the Orioles are kind of babying them along. But once you hit Bowie, like you're close. You're really close. And do the Orioles want to go out there and put that much of a logjam? Because, I think they probably throw a contract at Zach Eflin midseason here and try to lock him up to a 3-year deal. There's not much room in that rotation. And it could be why you're seeing a lot of 1-year deals, because they know what's coming and you don't want to block it because they're young and they lose their value. And I think that's severely overlooked by this fan base, just because a lot of people just don't really know about the minor leagues too much. But Lee, we've got some arms on its way. It's close, but
it's easy.
They could all get hit around this year too. I mean, that's possible too, but I mean, Bowie's really go out and watch Bowie this year.
And it's easy to overlook the minor league system. From all of us, we're the Orioles farm system experts from 2019 through 2021, 2022, because of all the guys they drafted and really all the talent in the organization was in the minor leagues. Now, a lot of that talent that we were really looking forward to has graduated. And for the first time that I can remember, the talent that they graduated is actually really good at the big league level too. So we're not paying as much attention to the minor league level. But, you do miss these really good players because now you're just not paying attention because it focuses on the big league roster. I think that's what tends to happen when your team starts to get really good again. So any other comments on there that you want to focus on before I ask these final 2 questions and get us out of here?
Yeah. Let's see. Rory Sports says, how much Heston Kjerstad will play? Eli's statement was confusing. I think he gets a shot in spring training to show what he can do. And if he comes out and stinks it up, like, he's probably going to be a bench outfielder. If he lights it up, he's probably going to be a starting right fielder to start the season. What he's got. I mean, the guy looked great before getting hit in the head last year, and I think he's a feared hitter, in my opinion. He gets up in there. He's not afraid of absolutely anything. He doesn't care if you're right-handed, left-handed. Doesn't care if you're throwing 100 miles an hour. He doesn't care if you're throwing 40. He just sticks his nose in there and he puts the bat on the ball. And I'm excited about it. I mean, if they trade him for a top-end arm, I wish him luck because it netted us a good arm. But this is a guy here who has 30 home run potential. And I hope to see it on display this year.
I think that Mike Elias and Brandon Hyde and all the important people in the organization, they're saying he's going to get a lot of opportunity because their expectations are that he's going to come in and fill a void left by that walked out the door with 44 home runs and Anthony Santander. I think that's their expectation, and I think that's why he's still here. I'm not so sure that they couldn't have gotten a Michael King or Dylan Cease if they package something around Heston Kjerstad. And I don't think that they necessarily want to get rid of Heston Kjerstad at this point because they're depending on him to provide a lot of thump in their order this season.
I agree.
What else we got in there?
Not much else.
Okay. All right, so a couple of questions for you then before we get on out of here. What is your biggest concern for the Orioles heading into the regular season?
Biggest concern, I think it's going to come down to how they handle the at-bats for certain players. Heston Kjerstad being one of them, Cedric Mullins being another one. What are they going to do with Gary Sanchez? Because we talk about like all these guys who are probably going to DH and whatnot, but like Gary only caught 22 games last year. I don't think people understand that. Is he going to catch here? Is he here only for Samuel Basallo? How are you going to utilize him? What are you going to do when Mateo returns? Does he take at-bats away from Jackson? Does he take at-bats away from Cedric Mullins? Like, you're just adding even more confusion into your lineup. So trying to find at-bats for everybody is going to be the tough part. Like, Ryan O'Hearn hits pretty decent with 2 strikes and guys on and stuff like that. But like, is he going to take at-bats away from Tyler O'Neill, against righties? And God, I don't want to be Brandon Hyde. I can tell you that.
Well, and I'll tell you that one of the silver lining for me with regards to Mateo's injuries, I think it gives Jackson Holiday the edge to play every day, whether it's a righty or a lefty on the mound. And I think that that's a guy. If you're the first overall pick in the draft, you better be an everyday player. It shouldn't matter who's on the mound. You're in that lineup. Now, my worry there is that it will give Brandon Hyde more reason to play Ramon Arias against left-handed pitching, because Brandon Hyde does not pay attention to reverse splits at all. Very much so, and it's very very easy for me to say it, but he very much just plays it as righty hit lefty, lefty hit righty. That's how he does his matchup. So he doesn't care that Ramon Arias has reverse splits. He's going to put him in there. And look, Ramon Arias was an unsung hero for this team last year, especially after Westberg got hurt, and he was one of the better hitters with runners in scoring position. He always has been. I have really no issue with Ramon Arias. I want to see the best players play, and I don't think that on this roster, Ramon Arias should be considered one of the best players anymore. That being said, my biggest concern for this season is the bullpen. A lot of people are excited about the arms that they have in this bullpen. How long till Gregory Soto turns back into a pumpkin? How long until Felix Bautista is ready, or how long until Felix Bautista is effective or ineffective? Can we realistically expect Sir Anthony Dominguez to fill in the closer role and not give up a bunch of home runs and not blow a bunch of games like we saw him do last year? And he didn't blow a bunch of games, but the ones he did, it was because he was giving up home runs. I don't trust him in a one-run ball game late in the game. I just don't. And so a lot of people love the arms. For me, I think they needed one more. I think they needed one more arm. I love Kittredge. I actually am a big CNL Perez fan. I think if he's used properly, he's a really effective reliever. Bautista, if he's healthy, he's the best reliever in baseball, in my opinion. But those are big ifs, and so for me, the bullpen is the biggest concern heading into this season. I just don't know that they've done enough to provide, like you said a bunch of times, to provide a contingency for if Bautista's not ready to go.
Yeah.
And then finally, which player will have the biggest impact this year? Jackson Holiday, Heston Kjerstad, or Felix Bautista?
I think it's got to be Holiday. I mean, that was your biggest hole last year, was second base. The talent level that he brings, athletically in the field, athletically on the base path. You see him when he's hot, how gifted he is with the bat in his hands. When he wants to shoot the ball in the gap the other way, he has the ability to do it. When he wants to turn and burn and hit one out into Utah Street, he has the ability to do it. Heston, I mean, I feel like what Heston is. He's an average defender. Just a lot of power, seems to, stick his nose in the box. He can run a little bit. I don't see him really stealing any bases or whatever. I think it all comes down to Jackson. Jackson can change the game himself in so many different ways, making a web gem play in defense, blasting a grand slam out of here, or stealing second and third in the eighth inning or something like that to kind of set up a game-winning run. I don't think those other two guys can affect the game as much. They do. They bring their own facets to win the game, but I feel like Holiday has that athletic ability to kind of take over a game, kind of like Ellie De La Cruz does.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, look, Felix, we know, just either wins the game or he loses the game. It's one or the other, but Jackson can just do so much through all 9 innings. And so if he really gets going, like a lot of us think we are, or think he is, this Oriole team is going to they're going to go pretty far, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. For me, look, it can't be Bautista, because my biggest concern is linked to Felix Bautista. So I can't say he's going to have the biggest impact. Now, if you're talking about if he's really good, he makes his bullpen that much better. And if he's really bad, you're in the same situation you were last year once Kimbrel fell off a cliff. With Holiday, he plays second base, and he's got great speed, and he can really set the tone for Gunnar, and let Gunnar see better pitches and eventually move Gunnar into a more run-producing role. But for me, it's Heston Kjerstad. I think Heston Kjerstad is solely being held responsible for the production that you've lost with Anthony Santander, because you've got to think about the fact that now he's that lefty bat that you're expecting to somehow hit in the middle of your order. And he's also the contingency plan for when Tyler O'Neill inevitably gets hurt. And I say inevitably because that's all he's missed at least 30 games I think, every year but one in his big league career. So when I look at that, if Heston Kjerstad goes out there and hits even 250 with 30 home runs, you feel a lot better about your roster right now and moving into the future because, all right, that's a box that's checked. Kjerstad can hit the middle of the order. He can hit 30 home runs for us. That's one less thing that we have to worry about. And he's your replacement for Santander, and he's your contingency for what we believe is an inevitable injury for Tyler O'Neill. So for me, Heston Kjerstad has the biggest impact on this roster. And then bonus question, just because I thought of it while you were talking about him. Better prospect, Jackson Holliday or Gunnar Henderson?
Ooh.
It's tough, man. That is a really tough question.
Look, when you're 1-on-1, you're supposed to be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Gunnar blossomed into something that he wasn't supposed to. He's supposed to be a good player. I don't think he was supposed to be a superstar. But he's got all the tools. He's got a rocket arm. He's got a great glove. He's got power. He can hit for average when he wants to. He can run. He brings that fire. He brings that leadership. Where I think Gunnar probably has the edge over Holliday is the leadership and the fire, just because of how Jackson's demeanor is. I don't think he really ever grows into like that leader role where guys look up to him like they would probably with Gunnar Henderson. But like speed wise, I'd probably give it to Holliday. Sheer power, I would probably give that to Holliday too. Bat speed, probably it would go to Holliday. Glove would probably go to Gunnar right now. We'd have to see Jackson at a full season. That's a tough one, man. And that's a damn good thing to have, that kind of problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if he gets remotely close to Gunnar Henderson, you're looking at two superstars.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, back in 2015, we watched Manny hit 37 home runs, driving close to 100. Jonathan Scope, after his injury, he came back. He hit like 270, 279, something like that. Hit 15 home runs and played solid defense. And I just remember being so excited to have potentially Manny Machado and Jonathan Scope up the middle for this team. And the excitement that I have thinking about Jackson Holliday and Gunnar Henderson for the next 4 or 5 years on this team, playing up the middle for the Baltimore Orioles, it's so far and away exceeds that. And then Westberg over at third base. But the excitement that I have for this team's infield right now, and what scares the crap out of me is the fact that you're not going to be able to sign all of them, right? Somebody that we love is not going to be here in 5 years. And I think that absolutely sucks. But for right now, I want to enjoy the next 4 or 5 years of those three guys playing together, because you've got, I mean, for me, you've got Corey Seager, Trevor Story, and then, whoever the hell else, in your lineup every single day. Like it's literally like Gunnar, Seager, and Story in the prime of their career, all being on the same team. And that is absolutely bananas to me that the Orioles could have that now. So I can't really choose either. And I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head when you're the number one overall pick, you're expected to be that guy. And so I think that the guy should be Holliday, and the more pressure is on Holliday. But if you had to ask me to choose who I'd take, I couldn't give you an answer. Could not give you an answer. So,
well, they got to play the season out too. I mean, if Holliday comes out and plays like a superstar, then it changes everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you already know what you got out of Gunnar, but there's a lot to be had with Holliday. And I was poking here with Santander, and I didn't realize it was like this. So he only hit over 30 home runs one time prior to last year.
Yeah.
It was 20, 11, 18, 33, then 28, and then 44. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility for Heston Kjerstad to right away hit over 25 home runs.
I expect him to. I think he's going to be a 25 to 35 homer guy this year if he gets 500 bats. 500 bats, I expect 25, 30 home runs.
If he hit only 25, right, that would be the third most in Santander's career. In his first full season.
Fourth most.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. For the fourth most. But in his first season, do you think that would be a failure among most of the fans?
Oh man. What's the average?
That because
what's the batting average? What's the on base percentage?
Santander hit around 240 pretty much his whole career.
Yeah.
So if he does that, right? So, but I want to mention, right? So Heston is, how old is Heston? Is he turning 26?
He'll be 26 in either March or April. He turns 26 early in the year.
It says I think he's 26 right now. He just turned 26 2 days ago.
Oh, okay.
So when Anthony was 26, he only hit 18 home runs in 240. Mm-hmm. So if Heston comes out here now, granted, that was also Anthony's third big league season.
And he was hurt.
Yeah. So we're looking at a guy who had 200, 800, so about 1,000 at bats in his age 26 season. Heston's got what, 120, 130? Mm-hmm. So if he comes out and hits 25 home runs in his first year, I think that's a win. And I don't think half the fan base is going to consider it a win.
I think it's a win also. You also have to think about the fact that, like, Anthony Santander is a Rule 5 pick, right? He wasn't like a highly sought after draft pick. The Orioles, he was injured in Cleveland's system, and the Orioles took him in the Rule 5 draft, and he actually managed to stick around and became one of their better players over the last half decade or so. Kjerstad's number 2 overall pick in the draft, and now we're talking 5 years ago now. He's already 26 years old. And, when you're looking at it just from the standpoint, he's got 140 career at bats. And this is going to be his first opportunity at extended playing time at the big league level, then 25 home runs, a 240 batting average, that's a success. But when you look at it's 5 years after he was drafted, he's already 26 years old. He was the number 2 pick in the draft. Some people are looking at it like this is his last opportunity. And it really is. And if he doesn't come out there and hit 30 home runs, why did you waste a second pick in the draft on this guy? Who could you have had in place of him? Now, it's not like who was the guy that asked Austin Martin, right? Everybody wanted Austin Martin. They thought that's who the Orioles were taking. They didn't. He's with the Twins now. He's a middling everyday player for the Minnesota Twins now. It's not like he's had an exceptional career either. But how many people are going to look at Heston Kjerstad hitting 240 with 25 home runs and say, what a waste of a number 2 overall pick? Right. So the age doesn't match the amount of at-bats and the amount of playing time that he's received to this point in his career. So I don't know that you can look at a prospect the same way that you look at Heston Kjerstad or vice versa. Yeah. But I think that 25 home runs is a success for him. And I think that if you get 25 home runs out of Heston Kjerstad and then 25 to 30 out of O'Neill and then all the other guys that you're expecting to take another step forward, I mean, you live with 240 and 25 home runs. That's a bonus for your roster, in my opinion.
If you get 25 out of Jackson, that's 75 between 3 guys.
Yep.
3 guys who 20 out of Adley.
You're talking 75 home runs from 3 guys who didn't factor into your team last year. Right. And that's before you look. Westberg missed 7 weeks and he still hit 18 home runs last year. Kalzer
5 games.
Yeah. Kalzer played. He was terrible for 4 months, really. And he had 2 really good months and ended up hitting 24 home runs. If Kalzer's good for 4 months, if he turns that around and is good for 4 months and bad for 2, that's probably 30 to 35 home runs for Kalzer. And then you're expecting Gunner's probably going to hit close to 40. This team's going to hit a lot of home runs, but I really like what Cody Ashley said about, and you alluded to it earlier, that they're preaching hitting line drives to this team, that the emphasis is on line drives and the power is going to come. So this team has the ability to really, really put on an offensive display all year long. Health is going to be a big factor. Progression, maturation, a big factor. But they have all the potential in the world to be one of the best offensive teams in the entire league.
So last thing we want to touch on, AJ said, seeing Cole Reagans and Witt Jr. get extended by KC and us twiddling our thumbs with no extensions for Adley and Grayson makes me sick. The ownership group kind of sucks. I'll touch on that. Cole Reagans costed himself a lot of money. It was stupid to take that, in my opinion. He costed himself a lot of money. So yes, he was only going to make $800,000 this past year. That was wrong because he got a pay grade to $1 million. So then the following year, now he gets another $1 million. Well, if he would have had a really good season, he could have bumped that up to $4 or $5 million the next year. Okay, so now you're at $6 million. That you could have made up to $13 million yourself in the final season in arbitration. Now you've handicapped yourself. You did Kansas City a favor. right? Not every player is that dumb. And I don't think Adley and Gunnar are that dumb to do that either. Now Witt was also dumb. He already within one season has costed himself about $60 million because he let his dad negotiate it. The Orioles aren't in that position. They have Scott Boras negotiating for him, not their father. They're not going to get these things done like Kansas City. Kansas City's very lucky. Atlanta got very lucky when they locked up Albies and Acuna Young and stuff. They took advantage of those guys. The Orioles guys, these were really good players, and good agents scoop them up quickly. They're not going to get that same bad advice. The Orioles are in a much different position, and it's not very fair to blame the ownership group because these agents are in here to make money. They're not in here to give a team, whatever. Yeah. So even Grayson is not going to sign early. I mean, one, because he hasn't stayed healthy. The Orioles would probably love to lock him up, but they still got 5 years of Grayson. He's not up until 2030. So them to even think about an extension for him right now, they probably got to see him finish the season out first. And then maybe year 3. So he's still got 2 years before he even hits arbitration. So they're not going to buy out those 3 years like that. The Orioles in a bad spot because they've got really good players with really good agents, and Kansas City's just got really good players who have their dad, doing it for them. It's just a different situation.
For sure.
It's not fair sometimes, but it's just baseball.
Yeah, we'd all love to see the Orioles lock up some of these superstars for a really long time, but not every superstar is made equal. And like you said, when you have Scott Boras as opposed to Bobby Witt Sr. Making the calls for your career earnings, it's going to be a little bit different. So hopefully,
Bobby. I feel like if Bobby waited to after this year, finishing second in MVP, that's a $420 million contract after year 1. He costed himself money. So. And Gunner's not going to do that. And I guarantee you, Boras has said, look, you won Rookie of the Year. You've got some MVP votes. Go out this year and get more. You're looking at $500 million. Why would you sign for $350 right now? Like, those are in a bad spot.
Yeah. Like, they're going to have to sign somebody at some point. With Gunner, I just have visions of Manny. And I hate it. I think that was the biggest mistake any Orioles owner has ever made in not locking up Manny Machado when they had the opportunity to do it. And, it cost them 308 plus lost seasons because of it. So
from what I heard, they tried, and Boras said no.
Well, I know that they tried. I think that
I don't think they were in the range.
I think it was like 8 years, 72 million, because Ken Rosenthal wrote an article about it. It was like 8 years, 72 million. And I think he wanted 8 years, 80 million, and the Orioles balked at it. It was something like that. It was like over $1 million a year that the Orioles balked at. But, by the time
once you piss them off, it's done.
Yeah, exactly. So, I have a feeling somebody will get extended. It may not. I don't think it's going to be Gunner. Maybe it's Grayson. His comments about I don't have a problem with Baltimore, that came off a little funky. Maybe it's Kyle Bradish. Maybe Jackson Holiday goes out and has a huge year for the Orioles this year, and they lock him up long term really quickly. Westberg, I can see getting locked up long term, but we're still a ways away.
I think the first one's going to be Zach Eflin. I think they like him enough. 3 for 66, I think, gets you that done, mid-season. The problem is if he has a good year, he's going to be a top 3 arm on the rotation, and he might get a hell of a lot more money than that. I don't know. He could get a 5 for 150 deal for all we know.
I mean, that's another guy who he's had back-to-back seasons where he's been healthy, which had never happened in his career before. What's Zach Eflin going to look like this year? If Zach Eflin goes out there and wins 13, 14, 15 games for you and pitches to a 3.5, that he's going to get a lot of money in free agency. You may have different. You're going to have to battle with everybody else if that's what he's doing midway through the season. So. All right, that's going to do it for us here on the Bat Around today. Thank you to all of you who tuned in. Thank you to our sponsor. Without you, we don't have a show. Thank you to all of our loyal viewers, listeners, fans of the show. Without you, we 100% do not have a show. Zach, thank you for agreeing to become the semi-regular co-host with us. You can expect to see Zach at least every other week on the show, if not a little bit more, depending on what his schedule looks like. I will be filling in with other co-hosts regularly in the weeks in between between. Next week, I believe his podcast is called Gary Williams Stole My Lawn Chair. We're going to have Brooks Rothschild on the show with us doing the bat around next week. So stay tuned for that. Until next week, see you.
See you guys.